people don't really sing during wedding ceremonies. At least it's not like typical, not even amongst Christians, to sing during a wedding ceremony.
No, apparently not. But I don't know, and this is going to be a little bit controversial. I don't know if that's because there's a tendency to divide civil and religious ceremonies, and so you wouldn't really a civil ceremony.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Hymnpartial, the podcast where we talk all things church music. I'm Monet Funka.
And I'm Cara Peregrino. Yay! And this week we're talking about wedding hymns. We asked you, our audience, about which hymn you sang at your wedding. Plus, we'll be getting personal and talking about our own. All that and more coming up.
But first, you know what I'm about to say. If you haven't already, go over to hymnpartial.com to join the Hymnpartial family. There you can support us on Ko-fi. You can follow us on social media and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Newsletter subscribers get first dibs to our bonus content. This week in our bonus clip, we will share which scriptures were preached at our weddings, plus some more fun behind the scenes info. So don't miss out. Go to hymnpartial.com, sign up today.
Do it. Yep.
So, some exciting things have happened since we last recorded. I know we've obviously been talking about it on social media if you've been following us, but Cara got married.
Yay!
She's no longer a Devereaux. She's now a Peregrino. And we were actually talking about this episode for months in advance. We were like, oh, well, we should do an episode on this wedding related. And we were kind of going back and forth.
We talked about doing it as a Valentine's Day episode, and that would have worked with the first wedding. It did not work with the second.
Yeah. So it would have worked. I think we were like, well, should this be like an off the record? Because
we were like, should we have our husbands on and like talk about it as the four of us? And then we were like, well, maybe they don't want their faces all over the internet. I don't know.
Well, we settled for an actual regular formatted Hymnpartial. It'll be like a little bit off the record, but it definitely is on brand in that we'll mainly be talking about wedding hymns. And yeah, as we said in the intro, like we did go out to you guys on social media and asked, and we got some really good feedback from you guys as well. And Cara will get to that in a minute. But yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Cara's married now. She had more than one wedding because she's super greedy, and but don't worry, it was to the same person.
I don't recommend it either. Two weddings in two countries in the space of 4 weeks. Just don't do that to yourself.
It was a lot.
It was really fun.
It was. And we obviously were thinking of you guys because we had the series on the Hope of Glory, and we kind of recorded all those episodes
January.
2 months ago now,
and
made sure that they were all set for you guys to still hear from us because we didn't want to just go away.
Which, in case some of you are wondering, that is why for the last month I've still been using my maiden name on the intros, was because I wasn't actually married yet when we recorded those, so it felt a bit weird to be saying I'm Cara Peregrino when I wasn't yet.
But it doesn't feel weird now.
But if you actually watch the videos at the end, you'll see that the last couple of weeks, I've been credited by my married name.
That's right. So yeah, obviously we've been thinking a lot and participating a lot in a lot of weddings, and your weddings were not even the only weddings that I was at this last few months.
Monet's been to 3 in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, she just, 2 of them were mine, to be fair.
Yeah.
But still, that's oof.
It's wedding season. You know, they say wedding season is wedding June
season hasn't
even
begun. It's April or something to June, July, August.
But I feel like I know so many people, their anniversaries are January, February, March. Genuinely, I could name 6 couples that I know that they've been celebrating their anniversaries this month or last month. So you're just how is it?
It's because we're not happy to wait 2 to 10 years to get a slot during wedding season. Yeah. That's what it is. We're February, it's minus 10 Celsius. Sure, it means we can get married. Let's just do that.
Just get a sweater, So we digress, but just expect that it'll be lots of little digressions during this episode. But it actually did raise an important point. because you shared this with me off air, and I won't steal your thunder, but people don't really sing during wedding ceremonies. At least it's not like typical, not even amongst Christians, to sing during a wedding ceremony.
No, apparently not. But I don't know, and this is going to be a little bit controversial. I don't know if that's because there's a tendency to divide civil and religious ceremonies, and so you wouldn't really a civil ceremony. Mm-hmm. But I think it's probably 50-50 weddings I've been at. The ones that are in churches, generally they'll sing hymns. Mm-hmm. The ones that are like in hotels and things, I don't know why I'm pulling a face. Like, it's like, I had to work through this, whether it actually mattered to me whether the wedding was in a church or not. It doesn't. Full disclosure. But anyway, yeah, so it seems to be quite mixed, whether they do or don't. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, well, why would you? Like, what? Why?
Well, it's so interesting because I have been in a lot of weddings in some way, shape, or form, either on the bridal party or as a singer, like a wedding singer, but not like that, just for the ceremonies. And that's actually the other way that I've seen this done. So the way we're kind of talking about it in this episode is kind of congregational, like, okay, everybody stand up and sing hymn 102. But I've actually been in a number of weddings where, like, while the couple was taking communion or doing a candle ceremony or whatever, I would actually just sing a hymn.
Yeah, or signing the register if you're in the UK, because that's a whole thing.
Yeah, so that's another way that hymns are incorporated into wedding ceremonies.
The thing is, even in like a secular wedding, there will be music because it's a whole thing. Like when you're coming down the aisle, you've got to have the perfect song. So like there will be music, and there's often music as you go out as well. Yeah, and so although there's no congregational singing in some weddings, I don't think I've ever been to a wedding completely without music.
Though I guess, I'm trying to think. My sister-in-law was married in Germany, and in Germany, there is no legal marriage outside of the little civil magistrate or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't just like go to a church with an officiant and he like signs the paper for you. You have to go to the office, and that's where you get married. It's like a whole ceremony and everything, which is really interesting. If you're in Germany and you're a Christian, I would really like to know how you feel about this, because, you know, the person who is binding you together legally is just some secular person, and they even give you like blessings and stuff, and it's just totally.
But they do that in England as well. They have like a little scripty thing that they write, and they make you do your vows. They're like, marriage is a solemn ordinance.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
It's just really interesting. Well, not obviously. So the wedding that I went to for my sister-in-law, this was 6-7 years ago. I forgot how long. It was all in German. So what I heard was like me asking my husband, like, what did they say? And they'd be like, oh, they said da 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 da. And then like the whole room would be like, ha 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 ha. And I'm like, oh no, I missed the joke. Somebody tell me. Because I don't speak German. I could get away with a few sentences, and then we'd be in trouble. But the point that it raises is that for a lot of people who are Christians, they look at the ceremony of a wedding as a time of worship, like a act of worship, for lack of a better phrase. And so there is kind of this element where, you know, most Christian weddings, whether you guys sing a hymn or not, you definitely have a pastor there, and he usually gives a little sermon, right? He gives a little like, let's look at the text and talk about marriage, right? And so you've got this special like joining together through God of two people becoming one. Mm-hmm. And you have prayer, you have scripture being read and or preached. Mm-hmm. And then there's the question, do you sing a hymn? And I think I never thought of it as being a question before, but I guess it is a question. Yeah. You know, I'm not offering an answer.
Because the thing is, it's this weird space where it's not your regular church service, or like on a Sunday morning, or like a prayer meeting or a Bible study or something like that, where you're kind of like, oh, we sing and then we pray and then we sing and then we get the sermon and then we sing and then we do the benediction sort of thing. Like, it's a totally different, but also not totally different thing, where it's not... It is focused on God, but it's also about like two people coming together, and obviously they're not God, but like it's still part of your faith and your worship. And if it's pointing to Christ, then I don't know. It's strange. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know.
I remember there's an older saint who lives here in Scotland, and he was saying that, you know, back in his day, like you would just have the service later on in the afternoon or evening. Like, so you would have church on Sunday, and then after the service, then you just have the ceremony and you just have like a dinner or whatever. And it was just kind of like an extended time of worship. And I kind of think of it poorly. People are going to beat me up for this, but this is just kind of how he described it, like a baptism. You know, like when you have a baptism on a Sunday, you don't usually just not have a service. Like, you have a service and then maybe at the beginning or the end, you'll have this extended time for baptism.
So does the bride turn up on a Sunday at 11 for the service as well and sit through the service?
I think that's how it was.
In her dress and everything.
Yeah, I think it was just, or maybe she go change into the dress, like, you know, in
Super
between
fast.
services. Yeah. I mean, because weddings weren't what they are today, where they're like a whole production, you know, you have like a hair crew and a makeup crew and a nail crew and a whatever. It used to just be like, wear a nice dress, and it was mostly borrowed stuff, and people would just come together, you know, hey, you make a potluck, and, you know, you make a casserole, and you make a salad and whatever. And that's what you did. And then part of that, this saint was saying, is like, yeah, it was just worship. So you would sing.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Like, my perspective was always like, because my parents and I are like, we're the only believing ones in our family. I was always kind of like, well, when I get married, I want it to basically be just an evangelistic event. Because I'm like, this is the only time I'm going to get some of these people, friends and family, into a church to hear the gospel. And if I have to get married to make them do that, then so be it. Like, if this is what it takes. I'll
suffer through it.
Well, obviously, like, I really love the guy I'm married to, but like, if a wedding is the way that we make that happen, then we make it happen. Yeah. Don't waste the opportunity.
Absolutely. So I think a lot to chew on. Let us know. We always say this, and we get like one or two of you guys. We really, really want to know.
Don't be shy.
What are your feelings about singing hymns during a marriage ceremony? Because I remember during ours, and we'll get to that later on, but during ours, there was a discussion with myself and a family member about the ceremony being about Jesus, like it being like Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And that was like controversial to this family member. They just were like, well, what about people who aren't Christians? They're going to be offended. And I was kind of like, tough, like, you know, not trying to offend people. Of course, Christians aren't trying to offend people with the gospel, but the gospel is offensive. The gospel says you can't. And Jesus also, did, you know.
It's such an integral part of your faith is just like, it's the core of who you are and what you are. And so to completely leave that out of one of the most important things, like experiences in your life, is just, it's just bizarre. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think too, that means that when we have these ceremonies, a natural thing is to want to sing out in praise to God, because we're saying our life, in the center of our life is Jesus, in the center of our marriage is Jesus. And so now that he's joined us, let's sing praises in his name, you know? Yeah. Or have them sung, which, like I said, I've been a wedding singer before, and I'll tell you more about my wedding later. Okay, so on to the polls. Why don't you tell us about the polls, Cara?
Yeah, so we asked you guys on Instagram. We are actually only going to ask you what you sang at your wedding, but then I thought an interesting question would be, will you or did you sing at your wedding? And I was going to just say yes and no, but we ended up saying yes, no, and I hadn't thought about it, because I can't remember who I was talking to the other day, but I was kind of like, oh, will you sing at your wedding? Another believer. And they were like, I don't know. I'd never thought about it. And I was like, you've never thought about this? Because this person was like, I'm pretty sure it's one of those people who have like Pinterest boards with wedding dresses on it. Like, and they have like, I'm going to have this sort of theme and this sort of color palette, and I need to find a boyfriend first, sort of that kind of person. And I was just like, so are you going to sing? And they were like, I don't know. And I was like, you've thought about everything else.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So I said, yes, no, we'll think about it. Now, 79% of you said, yes, you would definitely sing or did definitely sing at your wedding, and good for you. Thankfully, nobody said no, because I would have been like, well, I would have been curious what your reasoning is.
Yeah.
But nobody did say no. If you would say no, did say no, like if you didn't sing at your wedding, or you're like, I'm not doing that. Can you email us? Because I'm really curious. Just send me like an essay arguing your perspective, because I'm really interested.
It could be that someone didn't know, like maybe wasn't a Christian when they got married, or didn't, or was new to Christianity.
Didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, and they were like, oh, can
you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, there could be any number of reasons. It's interesting. So, and then 21% of you said that you hadn't thought about it, which surprised me how high that was. Also interesting, but those were younger people, because I looked at who that actually was, and I was like, these young ones. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting poll, because it goes to our discussion that we just had, which is like, well, why would you? And I think there are very good reasons why, but maybe people haven't really just sat there and thought about it.
Well, if you haven't been to many Christian weddings either, because my husband had been to one wedding before ours, and we had two, so we were the second and third. 2/3 of the weddings he's been to have been ours. Oh no, that's not true. Half the weddings, because we went to one together. Wow. And so, like, for him, he was like, I've never really been to any, so he kind of didn't really know like what the format was. So yeah. And then the second question we asked was what you sung or what you would like to sing at your weddings. And I actually, as I was thinking about this for our wedding, I wasn't sure, because I was like, there are so many good hymns out there. Like, how do you choose? Do you go for ones that are familiar, because we had quite a few unbelievers coming, or do you go for ones that you really like because you really like them, or do you just go to your Christian hymns app and type in love and then like pick the ones with all the love words in them? And a lot of the Google results and stuff were basically just like, sing Psalm 23. Everyone knows Psalm 23. Or like, sing All Things Bright and Beautiful. We're from the Church of England. And it was kind of like, there was no real rhyme or reason why those specific songs. It didn't make sense to me. Like, how does that fit with a wedding? Yeah. But you guys' answers were varied, but they made sense. Do you want me to read them?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we had 3 with Be Thou My Vision.
Wow.
Which was the top result.
Really?
Yeah. The second top result was actually Great is Thy Faithfulness with 2 people.
Okay. But that makes sense. Be Thou My Vision is, again, thinking about the theme, you're saying
it's Christ-centered. Yeah.
Yeah. We're getting married, but let God be my vision. And then Great is Thy Faithfulness is, again, like a hymn of thanksgiving, that you're so thankful for the faithfulness of God, even in the midst of good and bad times. And obviously the wedding being a good time.
Yes.
Yeah. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And then the rest were just kind of like one or so responses. So we had Come Thou Fount. Again, very good one. It gets recommended because it's well known as well. For the Beauty of the Earth.
I've not heard that.
I can't remember the next lines, but I can think of the tune. It's like, for the beauty of the earth. Na, 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 na.
Yes.
Evermore may we, no, something more may we evermore be, sing praise to thee or something. It is like a praisey.
I probably would recognize it if I heard. Yeah, if I heard it, I probably would recognize it.
Yeah. Then we have joyful, joyful, we adore thee. Makes sense. Joyful occasion.
Yes.
How deep the Father's love for us. We almost chose that.
Really? Yeah. I love that. That's one of my favorite
hymns. We swapped it out for
hymns.
something else, but I'll talk about that later.
Yes.
Praise to the Lord, the Almighty.
Mm-hmm. Good one.
And one by the Gettys called By Faith.
By Faith?
I don't think I know it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's like, it's a similar theme to Be Thou My Vision of like, by faith we continue on and like, we live by faith sort of thing.
Okay. Some of those are interesting. I mean, I didn't know all of them. I was just thinking off the top of my head, the weddings I've been to, what songs were sung, and I genuinely don't remember most of them.
I remember hearing, here's love vast as the ocean, all glory be to Christ.
Oh.
That is a good one, actually, because that is that kind of Christ-centered thing. That Here is Love one's good as well, because it again points to the greater love of God. And what was the other one they sang? They had quite a few hymns. Maybe Amazing Grace. Again, unbelievers there, and so it was the one that they know.
Yeah, everybody knows Amazing Grace.
At least the first verse.
At least the first verse. My husband said a good wedding hymn, and this is not one that we did, but is The Sands of Time Are Sinking.
Yes, Sands of Time Are Sinking. Some grows dim. Fair sweet.
There's a really good version by probably
What
Indelible
is that
Grace.
Song? I'm trying to remember the lyrics.
Let me pull it up for you. The sands of time are sinking lyrics.
Oh yeah, this is a really beautiful one.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about...
We could have done this for the Hope of Glory series, actually.
Yeah, we missed a trick. But that series could really go on forever. We could just...
It will go on forever in eternity.
It will. But the last verse of that song is, the bride eyes not her garments, but her dear bridegroom's face. I will not gaze at glory, but on my King of grace. Not at the crown he giveth, but on his pierced hand. The Lamb is all the glory of Emmanuel's land.
Yeah. It's a really nice one.
Beautiful.
I've sung it a few times in church, and I've always been like,
I think that hymn originally had like 22 verses or something crazy long.
We'll do an episode on it eventually. Yeah.
It's a beautiful song. I also was at a wedding where we sang Hallelujah, All I Have Is Christ.
It's a good one.
Very good one. Very beautiful one. They also sang one for communion, and I can't think of what it was. Though, another sidebar, there's controversy about communion at wedding ceremonies.
I had this discussion with my mom.
Yes.
About this, because we have friends that have done it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't really know, like, if I would want to do that, because surely it's a whole church thing. And then we were just discussing it.
Yeah.
And there are interesting points on both sides, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are interesting points. I mean, we took communion during our weddings, because we also had to. But I don't know if we would do that now.
There's room. There's room for growth.
There's room. Yeah, and
I mean, like, people do foot washing. They do lighting unity candles. I had friends who, because she'd grown up in Southeast Asia, and he was from Hawaii, and instead of like, they couldn't ship sand from each place because it's too expensive. So they got coffee roasts from each place because they both love coffee. And then they like they poured the beans in together as like a unity thing. And then they had their own blend of coffee. And it's kind of cheesy, but it's just very cute. It's like the unity candle or the hand binding or the just symbolic thing.
Actually, on that note, the wedding that I was at last week, 2 weeks ago, the bride is American and the groom is Scottish. So they had like a unity shot with bourbon and whiskey.
Oh my goodness.
American bourbon and American whiskey. And they gave everyone like a little vial of it or whatever. And they were like,
chug.
Salud. So I was like, that seems like a mixture. I don't know.
I had friends who did like They had their two tartans, one on either side, like nailed, and then there was like a strip, and then they had like a white strip of rope, and it was nailed to the top. And then they did this thing where they braided it together, and it created a cross from the white, and then their two tartans, and then it had Ecclesiastes written on it about the threefold cord not easily broken, and that's a really nice. Now we're on a digression about unity symbols. Sorry,
but communion,
we just did rings.
No, well, communion is obviously not that. If you do that at your wedding, and the arguments for and against, like, just light up the comments about that. I would say I wouldn't encourage a couple to do it, but I wouldn't like discourage them to either. And the argument that we've had is that like communion is for the church, and so like obviously we're a Christian, so we could take communion. But it should be something that we do as we gather. And so like that's the argument that we would maybe make now for why we didn't do that during our wedding, or wouldn't have done it during our wedding ceremony if we did it over.
Just the two of you, not the whole church.
Yeah, it was just
that was one of the things I was like, does this make sense?
But it is beautiful though that at the, like, again, we did it and we could be critical of ourselves, but it was nice to say like at the center of our ceremony is us remembering Jesus and what he's done. Yeah. So that, I think that's argument 4.
I still don't know which side I would come out on. Obviously we didn't do it. Just, I don't know. I was like, I don't know.
Because I don't know.
I think that's a good reason.
That's a good reason.
Like, if you're not sure if it's okay to do something or not, don't do the thing.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to think. And honestly, there's 2 songs that I actually did perform during wedding ceremonies, and I cannot remember what they are. They were that long ago. We're talking like 12, 13 years ago. But it was just me singing. It was not a congregational thing. It was like a performance. So like I had a mic and a guitar and I sang for those that were in attendance. And that's another way that you could
incorporate music.
Yeah, incorporate music. Though I do like the congregational singing.
I love it. Because like, do you know what was really nice? Was like, I'm just grinning now. It was like, at both weddings, these people whom like mean the world to us and their fellow believers, and getting to sing Christ's praises together with them was just, it's always nice. It's nice every Sunday getting to go sing with fellow believers. But there's something about like on your wedding day, which is a big day really. And then these people who have meant so much to you and mean so much to you throughout your life. And some of them have been like spiritually formative, and so getting to like bring all these people together and sing Christ's praises together is just, I don't know, it's a really nice thing.
It's beautiful. So if you're not sure, maybe we'll convince you.
Yeah.
Sing hymns at your wedding.
Yep.
Very cool. So we've talked around it. We should just tell you what we sang at our weddings, because why not?
We both got married twice, just saying, because, you know, if you're going to do something, go all out. So, although our reasons were similar and different, but
they're similar and different. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Well, it does, but it doesn't. But were your weddings like duplicates of each other?
Almost.
Okay.
Almost. So our first wedding was very small.
Very small.
It was very small. And same pastor did both ceremonies, and the same passages were preached in both ceremonies, what we'll get to in our bonus content, which you will not get during this episode. But because the first ceremony was so small, we didn't have any singing. So we didn't sing at all.
It might be weird because it was that small.
I mean, maybe we would have started a little revival up on the hill. We got married outside. So, but the second ceremony we did have singing, and my older brother is a like professional artist. He's like got an amazing voice, and he lives on the East Coast and I was living on the West Coast at the time. So the fact that he was able to come out to the wedding was a big deal. And so I asked him if he would sing a gospel song during our time of communion. So he sang Jesus at the Center by Israel Houghton. Houghton.
It's spelled Haugehutten.
Houghton. Now, I don't know anything about this person. I think actually there might be some controversial things that have happened with him since.
Yeah, like I seem to remember listening to some of his music in the like mid to late 2000s, and then there was something.
Yeah, I think there was some controversy. I don't know what it is, so I'm not even going to tell you.
He belonged to a church that was questionable, or he did something questionable, or just
something questionable.
You don't
is
see
questioning.
Much these days.
Yeah, but it. You guys probably, maybe if you knew this, if you're really familiar with, you probably guessed that was the song we sang, because I kept saying Jesus was at the center of our ceremony. He was at the center of our relationship, center. And we just thought that was perfect, like Jesus at the center. And the lyrics of that, I'll just pull it up. They're very simple, and they are, Jesus at the center of it all, from the beginning to the end. It's always been you, Jesus. Nothing else matters. Nothing in this world will do. Jesus, you're the center, and everything revolves around you. So we just thought that was a really simple message, and we wanted to drive that home. And my brother has this phenomenal voice, so he just like belted it, and it was beautiful. And I was kind of like, we were taking communion, and I was like, I kind of don't want to be taking communion. I just want to like listen to my brother sing or whatever. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful song. And I kind of wish, maybe looking back, that we sang congregationally. So that's kind of like a regret ? But to be fair, most people in attendance were not Christians. So, I mean, half were from church.
I do think you have to take that into consideration as well. Like, yeah. It
just might be a little bit awkward if you're like a new Christian, or if wherever your location is for your wedding is like a lot of Christians can't come or whatever. And the majority are non-Christians, then they're just going to be like, what am I singing here? It might be a little bit awkward, or it might be a great opportunity for the gospel. So I'll let you switch to your wedding, which is a different context.
I was going to say, actually, one of the things we thought about was how well-known the hymns were, because there are so many good hymns you could sing. But because, particularly with the celebration in Scotland, it was a very, very mixed group. But we had like, we're talking like super reformed to like evangelical Christians to believers, but very kind of like never got quite past the Jesus loves me stage, to people where you're like, I think you're saved, but your theology, good grief, to people who are like champagne socialists and definitely not saved and antagonistic to the gospel.
Yes.
And so you had this really bizarre mix of people. And so we were kind of like, some of these people never been to church in their life. Some of these people have never sung anything that's not Hillsong in their life. And some of these people have only ever, barely strayed out of the Psalms. So we're like, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
So we ended up singing Great is Thy Faithfulness, because I love that song. And because it's been a long, hard road to get to that point of actually finally being able to get married. And so it was just so appropriate. That was the opening hymn. That was the opening hymn. We were like, that's just such a good one to start, to say so God's brought us here and he'll keep bringing us safely on. And then at the very end, we sang Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of Creation.
Another excellent.
I really like. And so we picked those, just because they're fairly well known, but they also share good theological truths that we thought would encourage the believers there, and also hopefully challenge the non-believers there. But wouldn't be too difficult to sing either. Because that's the nice thing about Grace Thy Faithfulness. You're like, even if you're totally lost in the verses, by the time you've done the chorus a couple times, you're like, this is not difficult.
Yeah.
You can get this.
Yeah. And I think am I imagining it? I think it was maybe during the rehearsal. Like somebody started to play, but we didn't have the lyrics in front of us yet. or something. They like weren't up on the
she was
screen.
supposed to play like the first couple of. Is that at the Scotland one? It was no.
No, yes, it was at the Scotland. One of the rehearsals.
We didn't have a screen. We had like handouts.
Yeah.
And so we hadn't actually printed them and sorted them and got them to the place yet because we were doing the rehearsal the night before. And Laura, who was playing the piano for us, thank you if you're watching, she just started playing Great Is Thy Faithfulness, and she was just going to play like a couple of lines as a fill-in to say this is what happens here, and then we were like, Great is Thy Faithfulness.
I know, we were just kind of singing it, and I was like, oh, I actually know most or all of this song.
How
like,
much you know.
Yeah. So really lovely, and I think that was something that I really appreciated. You know, being married almost 10 years now, and having had 2 weddings as well for similar but different reasons. Because we up and married foreigners, but foreigners of different countries.
And maybe foreigners married us. Like.
That's it. So we had a small wedding, and then we had a big wedding. And our big wedding, we missed that opportunity, I guess, or chose not to, or didn't really think about what it would look like to sing hymns congregationally. But, you know, we did other things,
and the gospel was preached.
Oh yeah, the gospel was preached, and
we'll talk about.
We'll talk about in the bonus clip. I'm like really excited for the bonus clip.
So excited.
But yeah, so I think those are just some things to chew on. If you're listening today and you never ever thought about this, or you've been married umpteen years and you're like, actually, we never sang and never thought about it and wouldn't suggest it, but now we put a stone in your shoe or whatever, then let us know.
Do you know what else is really nice? Is that now every time you sing that song, you're going to think back to your wedding and the covenant you made with your spouse and just be like,
yeah, it's a great time.
Happy. Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully in 10 years' time, we'll still be singing Grace Thy Faithfulness.
Yes. That is the prayer, and that is the hope that we have when we say I do. So that's it for this week. If you are a subscriber, you'll be really excited to stick around for our bonus content. There's a link for that in the newsletter. If you're not a subscriber, I just want this to be a warning to you that next week, you're going to miss out on some excellent bonus content. And you are.
I'm so excited for next week.
Yes. And really, the lesson here is that having to wait until we remember to release our bonus content to the public, that's like... You might be waiting a long time.
With Monet's memory, you're fine, but I'm the one with access.
No.
And good grief.
So, newsletter subscribers get it first.
We'll be releasing it on my first anniversary.
Make sure you sign up at hymnpartial.com. It's free, and if you really love us, maybe you could become a Ko-fi subscriber and give us a little bit of that sweet green so that we can keep the lights on. Yep, that's right. Helps us get cool guests and do cool things, of which we have a long list of cool things we want to do, but we need that cash money. So go to hymnpartial.com, sign up for Ko-fi, join up for the newsletter, and all of the things. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.
Bye.